thing standing between all of you on lunch is these panelists, so try not to give them hate. And when we open the Q&As, it's basically going to be up to you completely how long this panel takes. I'm very, very pleased to be with this beautiful bunch of people. Most of you have known each other for a long time or know each other from different parts of this ecosystem. And that's what we're here to talk about today. The vibrant ecosystem that's currently ramping up in Cairo and Egypt at large. And in order for me to start dissecting deeper into that, I'm going to start with you. And telling me a little bit more about what you do, who you are, and telling that to the audience. And then we're going to move on from there to a deeper dive on what TIC and Etida do.
Okay. Thank you, Abdulrahman. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lamia Rashidi. I'm Incubation Department Manager at TIC, Technology Innovation Entrepreneurship Center.
What does TIC do?
Which is part of Etida, Information Technology Industry Development Agency. TIC and Etida are affiliated to the MCIT. And they promote the ICT. Their aim is to promote the ICT sector. TIC is more focusing on startups and innovation, on entrepreneurship. Etida, which is a bigger umbrella, is also supporting SMEs in the ICT sector. And this is through different programs.
Beautiful. So we're having kind of like a little bit of a government perspective also on government entities on ecosystem building in Egypt. And at this point in time, I see that as a very big part of the government's direction. And let's expand a little bit more on that, on the type of initiatives that TIC and Etida have at this point in time, when it even comes to partnerships with some different type of stakeholders, like one that we have here on stage, whether it be Plug and Play, 500 Global, and attracting such names to come to Egypt and contribute to ecosystem building. So let's expand a little bit more on that.
Okay, great. Actually, partnering, as you have mentioned, partnering with 500 Global and Plug and Play is part of the new strategy of the Etida, which was recently developed with Deloitte Consultancy. And when it was developed, we had also, as a partner, the USAID. This strategy focused on 4 main pillars in order to attract foreign investment to local startups. And one of these pillars was the access to finance. And under the access to finance, we had the initiatives the need to sponsor the opportunity for international accelerators and early stage VC to come and set up operation in Egypt. And that's why we partnered with Plug and Play Egypt and 500 Global. But again, this partnership is bigger, is under a bigger umbrella, which is Creativa Hubs. So we have, for example, Plug and Play. They are hosted in Creativa Cairo.
Beautiful space. Yes,
it's known as Creativa Sultan Hussein. And we have 500 Global hosted in Creativa Giza in Beni Sarat area. But these are not the only 2 Creativa. We actually have, the plan is to have around 30 Creativa all over Egypt. Currently, we have 8 Creativa up and running in different governorates. And the plan is for others to be recently launched. 5 will be recently launched, and the other will come later at the different stages. And in all these Creativa Hubs, we partner with the private sector, whether internationally, like the 2 we mentioned, or with local private sectors in different governorates. We believe in our role as a catalyst. Not that the government will do everything by itself, but in order to collaborate with the private sector and with the different player in the ecosystem.
That's beautiful. That's great to hear. And I'm going to use that as a segue into one of the collaborators, which is Plug and Play. So Plug and Play came to Egypt, early stage. What's the mandate? Tell me a little bit more about it. You can also introduce yourself in the beginning.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Diego. I'm with the investment team at Plug and Play. For those of you that don't know Plug and Play, we do a number of things. So we get to wear many hats, which is great. We work with corporations and governments. In the case of Egypt, we're fortunate enough to work with Etida, USAID, National Bank of Egypt, and the Egypt Post to focus on developing the ecosystem and catalyzing investment, working with early and growth stage entrepreneurs. We're also an early stage VC, so we do pre-seed, seed, and Series A sometimes. And then we also do corporate consulting. So we get to do a number of things, and we have a regional footprint. We're based out of Cairo. Our office, as we said, is in Masr Gadida in Heliopolis. You're all more than welcome to visit. It's a nice palace from 1910. So
I recommend it.
Palace. And then we also have offices in Morocco, South Africa, Saudi, UAE, and another 40-something offices around the world.
Beautiful. I'll use that as a segue then, Diego, to start expanding a little bit more. How long have you been here in Cairo?
So that's a good question. So Plug and Play has been investing in Egypt, I think, for a little over 5 years.
5 years.
But with physical footprint, we opened our offices last year.
Okay.
So when we kicked off the partnership with ITIDA and USAID, National Bank of Egypt and Egypt Post. But before that, we had been investing in companies like Bosta, NowPay or Links, Boktok, Bypass.
Good picks.
Yeah, good picks, thankfully. And we're very excited to have been able to partner with great entrepreneurs, even before having a physical footprint. And then we are able to, by opening the office, expand the services that we can offer to the startups we partner with.
Very nice. You're saying 5 years, yeah, you've been investing in this ecosystem. How have you seen the evolution of the ecosystem over the past 5 years? If you would put it in like 3 key bullet points.
Yeah, so for example, I think some of the first investments, we did them from the Abu Dhabi office when I was based there. And we've seen tremendous growth, and it's been really exciting to see much more capital flowing, lots of second-time entrepreneurs. I think we've seen a great evolution where 5 years ago, many of the first-time entrepreneurs were coming out of corporates and starting their own business, spinning out of the innovation lab of telco companies, and now we're seeing a lot of first and second-time entrepreneurs coming out of some of those success stories of the last few years, be it Swivel or Maxab or any of the companies that have raised significant amount.
Later stage.
Yeah, or Karim, and those companies that have evolved and grown from seed or pre-seed 5 or 6 years ago to where they are today, and people coming out there and starting their businesses. So it's been a really rewarding experience to be a part of the ecosystem for so long.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Diego. And I'm going to use that to build upon it. So you're doing seed, pre-seed, that type of range, but we had some bigger hitters. We have some bigger hitters with us today on the panel. So I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about the mandate of AfriInvest, and then we'll take it from there. You're going to see it's going to happen in our conversation. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to put you on the spot.
So obviously AfriInvest has historically been a private equity firm, and obviously with everything that's going on in the world, we decided to venture into the VC world, and we actually closed our first fund with Cathay in July 2022. It's a 110 million euro fund. Since launch,
a small one.
Tiny. Since launch, we've invested in around 10 companies. We're finalizing for our 11th. We're Africa focused, and we want to start investing in Egypt. We just haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. Traditionally speaking, we invested in Series A to B rounds. But we do have one of our portfolio companies that's actually expanding into Egypt right now. So we are trying to find synergies between the companies in our portfolios and up-and-coming opportunities in the Egyptian market as well.
That's very cool. So with your vast experience across Africa, what would you say are the biggest markets from your perspective when it comes to VC investment?
I feel like I answered this question.
Kind of like a little bit.
No, obviously, I think Egypt is obviously one of the biggest markets, and it can't be ignored. And I know we had discussed Nigeria and South Africa and Kenya as well. But I think
those are
there's
kind of like
so
the big
much,
four.
the big four, but there's so much talent in Egypt, and the market is still underdeveloped. So I feel like it still hasn't taken the weight it should. Although I know that Egyptian startups have gotten a lot more funding in recent years. So I think this is a great time to be in Egypt.
No, that's good to hear. It's a little bit counter to a lot of the narrative that we hear, like Egypt, I'm not really investing.
The Egypt story, or you don't?
Yes. So you buy the Egypt story. That's really good to hear. I'm going to use that to move on to my last but not least panelists of the day today. So Rafa, tell us a bit more about the mandate of Qubit, like what are you guys building, etc. How do you find yourself in between those two type of mandates that are on the left side there?
Sure, thank you. So Qubit Ventures, we're a micro fund. It's a $20 million target fund. We're North Africa focused, and by North Africa, it is mainly Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. We invest in seed to pre-series A, so this is like more of our sweet spot. We're sector agnostic, so it's more about the business model. And basically, we're part of a family of funds. So we're 3 partners. One of my co-founders is already co-created 7 other funds now across the world, and we work collectively together. And we help basically our portfolio companies tap into this network of global funds. So this is our mandate. We're looking at, we've invested already in 4 companies. We're closing another 2 deals as we speak, and proceeding forward. All the companies we invested in so far in Egypt, but now we're looking heavily into Morocco and Tunisia as well.
Beautiful. Let's play a little bit of ping pong together over here. From your perspective, what's next for the Egyptian ecosystem? Like, but before answering what's next, we need to look at like what are the challenges that are currently facing us to be able to take the next step. So what are the biggest challenges that face this ecosystem from your perspective?
So you're picking on me to bring the bad news, huh?
I'm picking on you to bring the bad news because we're friends, so I can do that.
Cool. Right. I think one thing, and I know ITIDA is putting a lot of effort into that, is the enabling environment. So back to the strategy that Lamia was mentioning, it's built around 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are enabling environment, access to finance or access to capital, access to markets, and access to talent. In terms of access to talent, we're in a relatively very, very good position with the quality of tech talent coming out of the Egyptian education system across several governorates. In terms of access to markets, this is an area that needs a lot of support from the ecosystem support entities, whether that be accelerators, investors, organizations like ITIDA, because the challenge of operating across different markets and market entry is always very, very hard. In terms of access to capital, of course, there's a shortage of capital across the whole world. No one can deny that. Having said that, if you're a really good startup, you will get your funding. So the question is, do you have a real product market fit? Is this a fantastic team? Is this, is the potential good enough? And if basically you fit all the criteria, you will get your funding. So I would put the least actually emphasis on access to capital. Maybe access to capital is harder for fund managers rather than for startups because of the denominator effect, but that's not a big issue for access to funding.
Beautiful. So if we springboard from that into, from your perspective, what is the next step for this ecosystem? I'm going to go around with that, so you all have a moment to think there of, from your perspective, what would you say is the next step for the Egyptian or the Cairo ecosystem to start becoming more vibrant and takes bigger leaps or bigger steps in this upcoming year?
Yeah, sure. Now, of course, for us as Qubit Ventures, from day one, our mandate was to invest in companies that are either already working across or serving several markets or have very clear potential to do that very quickly. Having said that, what happened with the devaluation of the Egyptian pound further validated our thesis, but now that has become, in my opinion, a very important factor for all startups in Egypt. And across Africa as well, because the devaluation risk is always there, and you need to have you need to hedge your revenue stream from basically different markets and different currencies. So this is one thing that I see a lot of Egyptian founders now putting a lot of emphasis on and striving towards, and putting the legwork to do that. The other thing is, like Diego was mentioning, we're seeing second round founders. The maturity of founders is improving, and it's still, I think that trend will continue for a while. So now we're seeing more, the average age is a bit higher, but it's not about the age, it's about the more experienced founders. So we're seeing more like experienced founders coming out of a certain industry who know the industry very well and are basically disrupting the industry where they came from, and they have not only the know-how about the industry, but the network for that particular business, which is always a very important factor for the growth of the company. So that is trying to look at the silver lining for everything that's happening.
Well, that's the only thing we can do at such times, and I'm going to move on to you, Lamia, with the exact same question. From your perspective and looking at ITIDA and TEEK, what are your plans for this upcoming year to continue supporting the Egyptian ecosystem?
Actually, I totally agree with what Rafa has just said. Adding to that, we believe very much in the importance of the talent, because the talent is the key ingredient to the Egyptian ecosystem and Egyptian startups. Also, the collaboration between the different players in the ecosystem. Like, I think we need to have more synergy between the many government entities are working on promoting the ecosystem, many private sector, many organizations. I think we will need to have more synergy, better synergy between the different players, and maybe also better enabling environment, legislation and stuff like that. I see that some people are working on improving not only ITIDA, but also like the Ministry of Investment and Hussam Heba, for example. Like several people are working on this enabling environment element. So I believe if we work on these two, we will get better
beautiful
ecosystem.
Beautiful. Echoing to you, Diego, what would it take? No, I'm not going to ask you the same question. What would it take for Plug and Play in this next year to double the amount of deals that it did last year?
So I think that's a good question. I think one of the things that I would say has been kind of the silver lining in this situation, and building off what everyone has said, is seeing founders diversify. And I think seeing that diversification in terms of revenue streams, and obviously all startups have talked about Saudi, right? Saudi has had a great gravitational pool, and also a great pool of money. So I think it's an attractive market, but I think this situation has also allowed entrepreneurs to look at expanding to other markets, and that's where funds that are based in Tunisia, funds that are based in Morocco, funds with a regional footprint are also playing a big role in helping entrepreneurs chart a clear path from saying, okay, we're doing our pre-seed in Egypt, we're building this product, we're finding product market fit, or validating this, and then we're raising a bigger round to expand to one or two markets, and seeing that kind of like diversification in terms of revenue streams and currencies. I think that's one of the things that that we have seen as a consistent, let's say, feature across the companies we've been investing in, and it's something that we're looking to see more of. A clear chart in validating here and expanding to other markets, and sort of, ultimately one of the things that I think we prefer as a fund, because we partner with corporations, is also seeing more B2B plays, but also B2B has a different, obviously D2C is very difficult, but B2B has different challenges, be it longer sales cycles. Also, you're tied to much larger contracts or much higher CapEx or OpEx. And then, so there are certain challenges, but I think one of the things that is a great opportunity, and one of the things I would like to see, is not just diversifying in terms of markets, but also when working with a partner, partnering with corporations that already have a footprint in other markets, so you can piggyback on them to expand to more markets and deepen lifetime value.
Beautiful pointer. And I'm going to wrap up with Nadia. What would it take for Africa Invest to have your first investment in Egypt?
No, I think everything Diego was saying is right on point in the sense that scalability is key. And Africa Invest as a group, we've invested in over 11 countries. We have experiences around, we're sector agnostic in all the different sectors. So we definitely look for businesses that have the scalability factor. And then we can come in with our know-how, with our network, because I think a lot of maybe first-time founders make the mistake that you think you can like copy-paste your idea into another market. You oversimplify the process, and I think we're fortunate enough to have experience in so many different markets that we're able to like plug in that founder with the local team to understand the local market and actually do your studies correctly in order to expand. It just comes to the original concept, whether it's scalable or not, kind of thing.
Beautiful. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to open the floor now for a couple of Q&As before I let you go to lunch. So any questions from the crowd to our panelists? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Brian from Nova Star Ventures. This question I'm sure you hear all the time, but what are you excited about? Which sectors or spaces are you excited about in Egypt right now?
Who starts? You make your pick.
Okay, we're excited about several sectors. For example, the logistics sector is exciting for us because it's a very fragmented market. And for international corporate to come into that market, someone has to do the first layer of defragmentation for that corporate to be able to operate in Egypt. So we're excited about the companies that are basically doing this level of defragmentation of the logistics market in Egypt. If you look at Egypt on the macro level, our education system needs improvement, our health system needs improvement. So naturally, companies that are solving acute pain in those two sectors are very attractive to us as well. And fintech, of course, fintech. I mean, everything is financial enablement is becoming part of the mandate of the country. So fintech is a very interesting sector as well.
Very, very cool. Any further questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for example, we have co-invested in companies that are sort of in that kind of niche in terms of logistic plays with embedded fintech. Logistic plays with embedded fintech. I don't know if there's a bit of echo. I guess you can hear me.
You can use Rafa's microphone. He can share.
Thank you. So yeah, logistics with embedded fintech, that's something that we really enjoy. The opportunity to sort of digitize the traditional industry and layer an additional thing, especially in the marketplace segments. We like marketplaces that can offer opportunities for credit scoring and opportunities for lending. You know, consumer lending is a bit challenging. I think we've seen like that in Europe you can Klarna, your Uber Eats. I don't think buy now, pay later nuggets is necessarily kind of the best financial development, but I do think microfinance is something super important. So anything in alternative credit scoring, allowing consumers to build different sources of data, empowering people to use their homes as collateral, to take loans, anything that sort of broadens the scope of financial inclusion is something that we're deeply passionate about. And also access to healthcare is something we love. So those are kind of, I would say, the highlights. Of course, everyone talks about fintech, healthcare, and logistics. It might be redundant, but those are the opportunities that we're really excited about.
Very cool. Very, very cool. One last question.
Cool. I just have a question. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
I just have a question around valuation expectations in this market versus in sub-Saharan Africa. So if any of you have some investments in sub-Saharan Africa and here, what should investors looking to invest in Egypt particularly anticipate in terms of average ranges? I know it's obviously sector specific and there's a lot of nuances, but as you fare it against some of the other geographies, and then also maybe interestingly against Tunisia and Morocco as well.
That's spicy.
So I can open, for example, there's a company or there's similar business models that we've looked at, let's say, in, just to give a broad range, Ivory Coast and Cameroon, Egypt, and then Nigeria and Kenya. I think Egypt tends to be a bit more expensive compared to the traction that we see in other markets. So if you want to think about bang for your buck in terms of traction and what you're investing in, I think Egypt sometimes tends to be a bit more expensive. Also because a lot of the founders come, again, or they were coming from these corporates with high salaries, very comfortable lives. So to pay yourself a nice salary and live in a nice neighborhood, it commands a certain round size.
Like where you live.
Yeah. I wish. We're working on it. No, but I think that segues into kind of the round size and the valuation. So I think, again, one of the things that has shifted is that the valuation has also made those things a bit different. So I think probably we're going to be able to see like smaller rounds with a bit lower valuations right now. And you can give the perspective of Egypt and the region. I think Morocco, what we have seen in Morocco is there's not that much activity. As much as we love Morocco and we've been there for years, it's a market where we saw about 30 million of VC investment last year compared to like 650, 700 million in Egypt. So it's, miles apart. I still think Morocco is a great market to be in. I think Morocco is a market similar to Egypt 5 years ago. So I think if you're early, you can be a winner. And I think it's a really exciting place. But I think also valuations in Morocco are significantly lower than in Egypt.
You didn't tell her the ranges, though. She asked for that. She asked for the ranges. You didn't give her the money for her buck.
Yeah. So for the ranges, I mean, everyone please jump in, but I think we're seeing pre-seeds in the 3 to 6 million range, seed 7 to 12, up to 15. Of course, there's outliers, right? People that come out of pre-seed with 20, 30 million and an MVP and a much higher valuation and a much higher dilution. But in general, we're seeing something like 3 to 6, 7 to 12 or 15, and then 15 to 25. And then, of course, then it jumps. I think that's what we have been seeing.
Do you all concur? Rafa, you concur?
Yes, to a large extent. I think this is more or less the range. Maybe on the valuations levels of Egypt, there has been, the drop has already happened, and we're seeing a lot of discounted valuations. A flat round is a success. A down round is very much acceptable today for a lot of companies, as long as they know what they're doing. They're taking this new round and expanding the business. If we're comparing Egypt to Morocco and Tunisia, I cannot talk about the Sub-Saharan Africa because this is not our area of expertise. But in terms of North Africa, they're very, very different markets. It's not just the valuations factor. So Egypt is a big market in itself, over 100 million population. It's a good ground for building your MVP. It's also a good ground for testing that MVP and then taking it to other markets. Now, and if we take on the other end of the spectrum is Tunisia, it's a very, very small market. So Tunisian startups have no option but to go global from day one. So the model itself has to be very, very light. A typical SaaS model would work well. Tunisians are very tech heavy. That's what we're seeing as well. So that adds. Morocco is a bit different because just like Diego was saying, it's quite similar to Egypt a few years back. The companies we're looking at in Morocco, most of them are the first mover in whatever they're doing in Morocco, but they're also targeting France because of the French-Moroccan connection and the Tunisian-French connection as well. So they're very, very different markets.
Very, very cool. So please help me give a round of applause for our panelists for the day today.